our friend Jeff, Dr. Jeff Feingold, is finally pulled the trigger on retirement. I'm very happy for you, Jeff, after a long career at the Business Review, and I'm assuming many other places before you made it there. I'm excited to dive into your career a bit and the state of business in the state that you've seen over the decades and the changes of that. But first of all, congratulations.
Well, thank you. I'm still going to be, alive. I'm not, I'll be working on projects through the Grass State News Collaborative, actually.
Oh, awesome.
I'm really excited about that. But the day-to-day stuff, no more daily deadlines, that's fine with me.
Oh, I bet. That's got to be nice. That was one big thing.
48 years of deadlines is enough.
I mean, over such a long career, I mean, especially from the 70s to today, I mean, we literally just had a little disconnect right here because of the internet. I mean,
yeah, there you go.
The technology and internet shifts over the decades must have just been tremendous from all angles, whether good and bad, to experience.
I mean, to let you know how long I've been doing this, the day I started working in New Jersey was the day they started going to what they call offset printing. Before that, they used linotype, actual linotypes, like a 19th century technology, which is what you were using hot lead and stuff. And they had, people were doing typesetting through what they call cold type, computographic machines, they called them mostly, and set it up that way. And then within the next few years, I started working at the Keene Sentinel back in 1981 or so, and they were starting to use computers. Actually, a company named Haztech, which was based in New Hampshire, was one of the first companies to make computers systems for newspapers. So it was a pretty rapid change. I mean, you're talking about 5 years difference, and that's what's been happening in the newspaper business. That's one of the reasons why it's not what it used to be anymore, because of technology. It has really changed things so much, how people get news.
I mean, even just in my incredibly short career by comparison as a student journalist during the '08 election, I mean, you brought it up before, I mean, the Twitter blowing up because of Barack Obama and all the implications of journalists now realizing, oh, I need to be on social media if I want to cover politics and news from a breaking news perspective, because it's no longer the 24-hour news cycle. It's could be 15-minute news cycle.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, that's why, newspapers used to be, you get your newspaper once a day, or maybe sometimes if you're lucky you have an evening newspaper in your town also, so you get twice a day, and that would be it. Maybe you get the headlines on the radio, but that's not the case anymore. Now it's 24/7, and I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing, because that's just it's a news cycle that sometimes involves stuff that's just filler and not news but speculation and people telling their opinions about stuff. But that's really what it is now, and you get to choose what you want to hear instead of everybody watching, Walter Cronkite or Huntley and Brinkley or whatever, or reading newspapers that basically are covering things in a slower pace where they're checking their facts, making sure there's accuracies, really doing a professional job. Now it's just kind of throw stuff out there and see what happens.
Yeah, and this is I'm probably going to do a segment on this eventually, but I mean, we're recording this on Wednesday, August 23rd. This is going to be released next week. But like the Linus Media Group is this YouTube channel, many YouTube channels that are technology reviews and everything in that kind of entertainment, but they caught major flack because they fell into the rapid expansion because of the internet age, being able to just increase output, increase staff at such an astronomical rate that Gamers Nexus, which is another YouTube channel, called them out. It's like, dude, like all your stats are wrong. Like you're messing up almost every video, and it's the same thing in the more traditional news industry if to keep up with that.
Exactly. That's why it's really interesting to me. Like New York Times is not a perfect institution by any means, but it really is a model, especially for American journalism. And one of the most instructive things to do is read their daily corrections and clarifications, because they do that. They are very diligent about that, whether it's a misspelled name or whether it's a more important inaccuracy, and they'll go through great lengths to correct the record. But that doesn't happen in most places. In many cases, especially online, you just move on to the next problem.
So tell me, Jeff, what's the secret? How do you feel like you did your part to keep the Business Review above that?
We tried to be as professional as we could as journalists. The news pages were without a doubt, or are, I shouldn't say were, are without a doubt done by quality journalists. We pride ourselves on really looking at issues, getting as many people, as many point of views as we can, making sure our facts are right. And we've done, over the years, we've done some really very difficult stories, investigative pieces on corporations and on individuals, and we've won many awards for that, including national awards on the quality of the journalism. We just really take pride in it, and that's not necessarily what you see a lot of, especially on online outlets. You just don't, and actually, a lot of the cable so-called news outlets, that's just people just talking and not really doing any journalism. They call themselves journalists sometimes, but they're not. They're not actually looking at the facts, trying to find out stories, but going into a story without any preconceived notions about it, which is a major, which is something that professionals, the reporters always do. It doesn't matter. You can go back 200 years, and that's what reporters do. Is you go in there without expecting any expecting it to justify your feelings, opinions about something. And I think that's one of the things we've lost a lot with the social media.
So, what's your opinion on which I make no secret, I think it's incredible what's happened with some of it, is with the local digital outlets that have really expanded, especially in New Hampshire, is definitely focused. I mean, we've got, like you brought up, the Granite State News Collaborative. You're going to be doing stuff with them. There's the New Hampshire Bulletin and NH Journal, In Depth New Hampshire, and these hyper-local outlets. Like, it's what's your take on that aspect of the current landscape?
I think that for the most part it's been really good. I know the Collaborative, which I was there from the very beginning with that, and I think it's just a great collaboration. It's almost all the news outlets in the state together, sharing their content, making sure that their readers are informed as much as possible. It's not a matter of I want to have this, I want to do it first, and it doesn't matter. We realize that every news organization in the world has limited resources now, and we realize we can't cover everything altogether. So this way we can work together to cover issues that are really important to the state that we probably couldn't do individually. And that's the best thing about the Collaborative, is that it's really helping us really focus on things. And I think it really came to light during COVID, when we all shared content and really informed our readers, our viewers, our listeners about what was going on, because it was obviously an existential moment for everybody. And we really did some great stuff. And the same is true also with race and equity, which is a major topic for Granite State Collaborative, which was something that really hadn't been covered in New Hampshire, because New Hampshire, didn't think, as a whole, we never thought, well, we don't have any people of color in the state. Well, that's not true. And this is something that we deliberately went and covered and found out the issues that affect them. We're talking about people. BIPOC people of all people of all races, but also a lot of immigrants and refugees who have been coming to New Hampshire for many years now, and are contributing to our state without really being noticed or recognized. And that's something that the Collaborative has done really well.
In class, too, is definitely an important aspect.
Yes, absolutely. That goes without saying.
Yeah.
I apologize for not putting that in there.
Yeah. I mean, the Invisible Walls series, for example, that you
that's really something
which is fantastic. And
actually, that's something I'll be working on afterwards, is because we're going to be expanding it to other parts of the state to look at.
Oh, amazing.
At zoning restrictions and housing restrictions in other parts of the state, because that was a major project that I'm really extremely proud of.
Yeah, definitely excited to hear more about that. As I had, was it Paul? Who was the reporter on the ground for that?
Oh, Johnny Bassett?
John Bassett. Sorry, John Bassett.
Yeah, he's in the Philippines now, for crying out loud. What the heck? He's getting some kind of doctorate or something. What do you? He was great.
Yeah,
he was great. We have someone else who's working with us, who's a doctoral candidate at UNH, who's doing the work now, and he's wonderful as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, local outlets just can't afford to do that sort of investigative
No.
journalism. It's so time intensive, so expensive. I've had the New Hampshire Fiscal Policy Institute on here. They're doing very similar work from a different
Yes.
angle. It's like Conquer Monitor is great, but I mean, there's only so much you can do and still be able to print and get everything syndicated everything like that. It's a lot of money and work.
Yeah, and also, back in the day, if you had a newsroom with maybe 8 or 9 people, you could say, all right, one reporter could take some time off to work on a story. Well, everybody else will cover for you, but we'll give you this time. But you can't do that anymore when you have 3 reporters. It's just not possible. And
All right.
it's very difficult. That was one of the things about the Business Review. When our print publication was out twice every other week, and that gave us the luxury of having basically 8 to 10 days to do an in-depth story. And occasionally Bob Sanders, who also has retired, unfortunately, who did so much of the great work for the Business Review over the years, was a great investigative reporter. Sometimes I'd say, Bob, let's skip the issue with you. Just take the month and work on something. And that's always paid off, but it was a luxury. Absolute luxury.
All right, I want to spend the last little bit of time here on the look of business in the state, because I mean that was the primary focus for the outlet. Obviously, there's many other things we covered for sure within the state, but it's a big thing that we've talked about here when the show was over on WKXL. I mean, what are some big standouts or trends maybe in the business community that you've witnessed over your time at the Business Review? I mean, you talked about computers popping up. I mean, New Hampshire shockingly has been a leader when it came to a lot of computing.
Yeah, I wrote my farewell in the paper that's coming out on the 25th. And I was mentioning that when I first started working at the Business Review, the largest employer in the state was Brown Paper Company still, 1983. And that was a paper mill, the big, huge paper mills in Berlin that at one point, I think, employed almost 10,000 people. It was, the people in the North Country were had great jobs, many of them union jobs, and very prosperous and thriving up there. And within a few years, Brown Paper was gone, James River Company bought it, and they were gone by 10 years later, and it just dwindled to nothing. And, but what happened, at the same time when that was fading away, it was Digital Equipment Corp. And all these other early, Wang had a big facility here. These are early tech companies. And, of course, there was Sanders Associates, which is a homegrown tech company, which is now BAE Systems. But that tech sector in New Hampshire has grown so, the state has such a diverse, robust economy now, which when it didn't have it had mills. It had the mills, and it had some tourism. But now it's a thriving economy. We have a major tech sector, still have a strong manufacturing sector, which New Hampshire always had. But they have also we also have a strong financial services industry. We have really it's a lot more resilient now, New Hampshire. We're much, as we know, New Hampshire is pretty resilient to recessions. It's not that they don't happen here. We've been through some bad ones. In my time here, we had the real estate depression, which was almost self-inflicted when you think about it. I don't get into the details of that, but for the most part, we have weathered it better than most other states because we have a diverse economy, and there's a certain Yankiness about it.
Yeah, I mean, how much of it do you think it's culture?
Yeah, well, I don't think that the banks in New Hampshire are going to make the same mistakes they made in the late 80s, early 90s. I don't think they'll ever do that again. I hope. And they learn from their excuses, but they learn from their mistakes, but I don't think that's true in other parts of the country. If you see what's happened.
Yeah, definitely.
Financial crisis is case in point in the early 2000s.
I mean, you just look at the mill yard and where Business Review is based out of. It's a fascinating juxtaposition if you look at 100 years, but you just look 30 years in between. I mean, once again, talking about a student journalist who's covering the primaries, we were going around some sketchy facilities around the mill yard where they weren't developed, but the candidates were having their election night events there in the lead up to the election. These call centers and these Oh God, I probably have scraped a couple of years off my life going into some of those buildings even for a couple hours with some of the stuff hanging out of the walls. But and now it's thriving. You got UNHM, SNHU down there. The stadiums are really doing well. Housing is popping up all over the place.
And there are thousands of jobs in the mill yard. Really good jobs. You have law firms, you have marketing firms, you have obviously tech companies all over the place. You got all Dean Kamen's companies plus others. You have all this, the companies that are associated with Army, with the regenerative medicine. United Therapeutics has a huge space down there. It's really quite amazing what's happened to the mill yard, because old timers from Manchester have told me that there were people who just wanted to tear down the mills at one point because it was a bad memory to them. Having to work in those mills, and the working conditions were disgraceful in those mills. But fortunately, they didn't tear down most of those mills, and they've just rejuvenated, and it's made New Hampshire. I mean, Manchester is a really interesting case in point, because I think it represents the whole change in New Hampshire's economy over the years.
All right. We're about out of time. I mean, let's look to the future. I mean, give me your. You have all this experience. What's going to happen 10 plus years? You got anything for me? What should I invest in here, Jeff?
I'm not going to know. I know someone's going to win the New Hampshire presidential primary. I don't know.
That's about all we can hope for at this point. But
no, I'm making predictions. I'm a Yankees fan. I learned my lesson this year. There's no way I'm making any predictions about anything anymore.
Awesome. Well, I really look forward. I want to have you back on as these new projects come up.
Anytime. Just get in touch with me. I'd love to talk with you. It's been great, and I really hope you guys you're doing well with this with your project here, and it's a good thing for New Hampshire.
I appreciate it, and definitely still check out nhbr.com. I'll still be hitting them up to send some of the people my way. Poor Amanda, she's going to be getting some emails from me here sooner rather than later. So best of luck to that team over there, and best of luck to you, Jeff, with retirement.
Good. Thank you very much, AJ. It's been great.
The New England Take, policy, politics, and life in New England. The NewEnglandTake.com. Like and subscribe. Check out the podcast feed, the YouTube feed, the Twitters, the podcast, the Facebooks, all of that. We're all over the place, and so we can do a lot more in the future. If you want to reach out to the show, the NewEnglandTake at gmail.com. Talk to you soon.